the power brokers of New York, it's a different world now.
It's a different world.
I mean, you know this world well, right?
A little bit.
That was the biggest bullshit answer I've ever heard in my life. Yeah, do we have to cut that? No, we're going to actually zoom in on him when he looks uncomfortable and he's doing that. All right, welcome back to the Moynihan Report. I'm your host, Michael Moynihan, here on the 2A Network. Today, I'm very lucky today. I think this is a lucky episode because I look a bit disheveled, by the way. Do I look disheveled?
Yeah.
I look disheveled. Let me do this at the beginning. That we have my friend, Richard Farley, who is the author of a new book called Drop Dead. And this subtitle, Rich, is too long.
Yeah, no.
I'm going to read it, though. How a coterie of corrupt politicians, bankers, lawyers, Spinmeisters, and Mobsters bankrupted New York, got bailed out, blamed the president, and went back to business as usual. And then a parenthetical, and it might be happening again. Rich Farley.
Correct.
Welcome to the show. Is it happening again?
We'll see.
Because we're 50 years out from the original.
Yeah, well, I'm going to
crisis.
get a little ahead of myself here and say, there are a number of factors that caused the '75 crisis. Two were unique to New York City. One was the chicanery and corruption, which we can talk about, which is a lot of fun. And the other was New York City took on many more obligations as a municipality than other cities did. And if you start talking about free buses, childcare through age 6, supermarkets, rent-free, when you look at all of these costs that are now on the agenda in New York City.
You mean the Sovietization of New York?
At least the DSAization of New York City.
Yeah.
You can see a path that could lead very quickly to fiscal chaos.
You point out in this book in 1975 in the fiscal crisis, that a lot of people left New York.
They did.
This is the tax base of New York.
Correct.
What percent, I don't know if you know this off the top of your head, what percentage of the taxes in New York are paid by that top 1%? It's an extraordinary high number, isn't it?
I've heard something like a third of the taxes are paid by
like
10,000 people. So some number. But when you get the actual number, don't go to bat on that number. But it is extraordinary. How few people pay an enormous amount of tax. The other thing to remember is cities are run on a razor-thin margin of fiscal solvency.
Like supermarkets,
exactly,
by the way.
like supermarkets. And it does not take much to throw that equilibrium out. And when the municipal bond market no longer trusts you to be fiscally responsible, it can end very quickly.
And so where are we right? So we'll go back to the 70s, which is a lot of lessons in the 1970s. But where are we right now as a city? I mean, the city of New York is kind of limping along fiscally and has a little before COVID, but COVID really has an effect on it. I mean, are we in pretty dire straits?
Well, let's walk through it. What caused the crisis in 75? The recession of 73 and 74. The decades-long migration of industrial jobs, good-paying jobs out of New York City to the suburbs and down south and then overseas ultimately. You had rising interest rates, You had the arrival of unskilled workers who hadn't gotten the memo that the industrial jobs had left right at the time when you had what was called white flight, this migration of middle class enabled by GI Bill, the mortgages under the GI Bill, the Interstate Highway Program. It became easy to live in the suburbs.
Everyone's going to Long Island. In New Jersey.
Long Island, Westchester, New Jersey. You also had a significant decrease in federal aid because the Nixon administration coming in 1969 scaled back many of the LBJ's programs. So if you look at where we are now, interest rates are elevated relative to zero, which is where they were for a long time. You've got, with Doge and other things, the big, beautiful bill. I call it BBB because that's what the New York City credit rating is going to be, triple. You have had no growth, really, in financial services jobs. The growth in the industry over the past 10 years has been in Texas and Florida. There hasn't been the shutting down and moving of jobs yet in large numbers. But that is clearly something that people are watching and is at risk with them.
But there's also a thing
Mondami administration.
Yeah, but you look at things like crypto. And there was an attempt at starting a lot of these companies in New York.
Right.
There was an insane excess of regulation, and they're all in Miami. The Miami mayor, who's like, I'm the crypto mayor, all come here. And they did. And we lost a lot of those jobs because of this.
We lost a lot of growth and incremental jobs and industries. I think the turning point was when they shut down the when over in Queens when they wanted to do the Amazon.
Oh
thing.
yes, that was AOC's big victory.
And that crowd, which is the Mamdani crowd, shut that down. Even though the local residents wanted it, real estate prices would have gone up, jobs would have been great, but it was shut down. I think really as a flexing of power. And that I think we may look back on that as a turning point in
because it's kind of forgotten about. I mean, the things that people don't often think about or talk about is when you have the Mamdani AOC kind of conversations about the economy, is that we don't like these Wall Street guys who just, make money doing nothing. And I have some sympathy for that, for some of these people. And
you mean my clients?
Yeah, like literally everyone you know.
This over.
Yeah, as is your career. So those types of people, and it's like we don't need them, and we also don't need these shitty jobs. We need good jobs in this kind of fantasy.
Right.
You can get rid of this tax base that pays so much of this stuff, and you can prevent those jobs from happening because magically there'll be people, I don't know, with matcha stands that get $50 an hour.
Yeah.
It's just kind of modern voodoo economics.
Correct.
Yeah.
And scary because, again, as we see these echoes of the past in terms of the stresses on the fiscal situation in New York City, one big difference now is you don't have the sensible voices. I mean, can you imagine A-Beam if Amazon wanted to build a big facility, them turning it away? You had sensible people. They may have been leftists in a traditional sense, but they weren't crazy.
Yeah. But I mean, it was also not a political monoculture in the
Even
sense
Paul O'Dwyer, the president of the city council in 75, who was at the time, a very left-wing guy, was also very practical and was not dogmatic in terms of, he may, with rhetoric, demonize the banks, but he also knew that paid for his lefty programs.
Yeah. I just had a conversation, and the book is behind you, with Sam Tannenhouse about his Buckley book, and Buckley's famous run for mayor of New York City. And you look back at it, and it's an attack on John Lindsay, who is a Republican and a sort of old rhino Republican in name only.
Right.
But at least there were these people that were like the Rockefeller, Abe Beam, John Lindsay, people that were not super ideological.
Correct.
But there was a kind of mix of political parties. This is a political monoculture in New York City.
Yes.
Now. And I just talked to somebody who was one of the listeners who called in the last episode that we did and said, the thing, which I thought was a great point, the thing about Mamdani is he's the creation of millionaires and the bane of billionaires. And nobody else is paying attention. The millionaires in Park Slope love him, the billionaires hate him.
Well, one positive development, I think, out of this primary is the old sort of racial aspect of New York politics where, they're really, if you go back to the Giuliani-Dinkins race, it was very much a racial undertone, maybe even overtone.
Yeah.
We've just had a primary where the white candidate won the black vote, and the non-white candidate overwhelmingly won the white vote.
Overwhelmingly.
You got to ask yourself, what is the new alignment? And I think the demographics of the city have changed so dramatically. Nobody really knows what this new alignment's going to be, except to say that marching out a traditional ethnic candidate, neighborhood, those neighborhoods don't exist anymore.
They do not.
You're screaming for the wrong neighborhood.
Yeah. I mentioned this the other day, and if you're not watching the show, you should be, because you would know this, and you would have ordered a book from the 1980s called Canarsie, which is a great sociological study of ethnic New York, and it just focuses on Canarsie and how these little enclaves became conservative.
Yeah.
How they left Democrats and liberals.
Sure.
And that's the thing, like the Mamdani campaign in so many ways is a campaign about that disappearance. because it's about gentrification. It's
Right.
about, it's an unaffordable city, et cetera. And, he's not totally wrong about that. I mean, it is a very, very expensive city. Do you try to prevent that? I mean, is that good policy from an economic standpoint? Like, has it ever been done that you can actually prevent a city from being successful and therefore becoming more expensive? So,
No.
I mean, the idea is what? Rent freezes?
Well, look, we're talking. Let's start with housing, and then we'll talk about the food costs.
Yeah.
The way you reduce the cost of housing is you increase the supply of housing.
Correct.
If you reduce rents and freeze more rent, you will get less housing. This is not, some genius idea we've come up with here. This has been known forever.
Yeah.
So that's going to make your problem worse. And you have a wealth transfer from new arrivals to the city who can't get a rent control apartment to the incumbents who may be making a lot of money. Maybe the grandchildren of the person who ultimately got the apartment rent control way back when.
Oh, the only people I know have rent-controlled apartments are from either a parent or grandparent.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's a massive wealth transfer to upper middle class and middle class people from the less affluent.
Yeah.
And it does not result in more housing. It results in less investment in existing housing and a reluctance on, if you're saying we're going to increase rent control to where it does not exist now, who is going to build an apartment building? How do you know what your cash flow is going to be?
Yeah, I mean, this is...
so that's crazy, okay?
It is crazy, but there's a debate in the Democratic Party about
food.
this. Yeah.
You just mentioned that margins in supermarkets are razor thin,
tiny,
which is absolutely true. Now, the Mondami proposal, I think, is really a bunting.
Yeah.
He's going to have 5 supermarkets in the bar. It's not really going to make an impact.
Yeah.
But if he's serious about rolling this out, you're going to put out of business the privately owned
you're underselling them,
supermarket.
yeah.
Right, you're going to undercut them.
Yeah, yeah.
And what is the cause of food inflation? It isn't because supermarket owners are now widening out their profit margins.
Yeah.
It's because the raw material of the food, as a result of ridiculously inflationary policies of COVID era, resulted in this inflation, which is now, by the way, practically out of the system. So the idea that government intervention is somehow going to reduce food costs is equally, perhaps even more silly.
Yeah, as Milton Friedman said, everywhere and anywhere, inflation is a monetary issue.
Of course.
And that is, I mean, look, we have inflation numbers that just come out, 2.9%, 2.7%, depending.
So we're getting close to the magical 2% number.
Yeah, well, we'll see.
It's magical. No one's really.
I don't know which direction this is going. I mean, this is the first thing we've seen as a result of Trump's tariff policy and various other things. Do you have? Let me just actually focus on that for a second.
Sure.
Do you have confidence in this economy right now? The economy that the president, because the taco thing.
Yeah.
Where Trump always, what is it? Trump
chickens
always,
out.
Trump always chickens out.
Yeah.
And markets react, and they react positively when he chickens out. So markets being strong and positive rely upon Donald Trump not keeping his promises.
Well, look, I think what we've seen, the equity markets are obviously near all-time highs.
Yeah.
I think the equity market in particular, which I don't watch because I don't think it's a good barometer of where the economy is going. Watch the 10-year bond, the Treasury bond. That'll give you a much better. It's a smart institutional market, not a dumb retail market. I think what it shows you is the markets become desensitized to the day-to-day tariff, cage shaking.
Yeah.
Now, whether that's smart or not, who knows? We all thought that if we bombed the Iran nuclear program, oil would go to $200 a barrel.
Yeah.
If you put that trade on, you're not feeling.
And I think Tucker Carlson said 10,000 Americans will die. 100,000 Americans will die.
Right. And you remember, you're old enough to remember the first Gulf War, where no blood for oil in the college campus.
Sure.
Hundreds of thousands, the third largest standing army, Saddam, are all going to die. It's.
By the way, can I point out something? Can I get off track for a second? No blood for oil.
Were we on track?
No, there's no track. We don't like tracks on this show. Tracks are bullshit. When I remember these protests that no blood for oil. I was in Europe at the time, and I was living in Europe, and everyone with the signs no blood for oil. America didn't get any of those oil concessions.
That's right.
They were auctioned off to mostly like Chinese companies.
Yeah.
Right. So is there ever a point that the Iraq War was a disaster? It was a mistake?
Not the first one.
The first one was one of the greats.
Yeah, that's what I'm
It was up there with Grenada.
That was no blood for oil. The first one.
Yeah, the second one was really no blood for oil.
Not a great idea. Yeah.
Not a great idea. But can we learn the one lesson that main drumbeat from the people in international answer in these various coalitions around the street was wrong and not even close to being true?
Correct.
So, yeah. And by the way, the argument was always if you wanted cheap oil, you just lift the sanctions, which is what they were putting on the Iraqi people. Anyway, let's. I always have these grudges that I need to settle in the middle of conversations.
The point is relevant to today, which is to say, the markets, like the press, overvalue and undervalue, because it's impossible to really know the future, events and their consequences. Yeah. Now, when the tariff thing first started coming, there were wild market reactions negatively.
Yeah.
Now it
and
seems
the bond
to
market
be, now,
too,
whether it should be reacting and is underreacting, time will tell. But I don't know where the economy's going. If I did, I wouldn't be here. I'd be out trading and retired.
No, but it is the crazy person who always says they're going to kill themselves. And they never do. And you're just like, all right, okay, we'll see you later. You don't call the police. You don't call the ambulance. This is not a great economy. It's not a great theory for the economy, always presuming that the guy is lying.
Well, saying everything will probably be mediocre is not going to get you massive clicks and headlines either.
No, exactly. All right, let's go back to the book, Drop Dead. Obviously, in the subtitle, you say, and it might be happening again. Yeah. That's got to be the impetus for writing a book about the financial crisis in New York, which Drop Dead, by the title, as a lot of people I think listening to this would know, is was it Daily News headline?
It was the Daily News headline, which is a great irony. Yes. Yeah, which we can talk about.
Ford to the city, Drop Dead.
Right.
Explain what that was all about and why this kind of provoked you to write the book and say there's echoes today.
Well, I'll reverse that. I wrote the book because in 2020, I had an outreach from the Adams campaign, 2021, who was running for mayor, saying we're very concerned that COVID might cause a fiscal crisis akin to what happened in 1975. Could you give us a sense of what happened then and how we can sort of prepare for these?
They contacted you for this to be like a sort of court historian.
There was sort of an advisory committee,
okay,
which I don't want to say who else was on it because it was not.
But they were all Turkish.
No, they were all New York, a former comptroller, elected officials, and getting together to be a kitchen cabinet on fiscal crisis that might be looming. Of course, it didn't happen because the Biden administration came in with massive amounts of money. They had the helicopter dough, which caused the inflation but saved the city. And I took a deep dive in what was happening in 1975. And it shocked me that all of the mythology of the heroes and the villains, it was a much more complicated story than what we were led to believe. And what we were told saved the city, the creation of the Municipal Assistance Corporation, actually didn't. And what saved the city, and it makes total sense when you think about it, was the money coming from the federal government.
Yeah, we tell ourselves these stories in order to live.
Which ties into the whole headline.
Which it ties into the headline, but it also, the Wall Street Wars book, the previous book. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in that book and in other people who have done stuff about 1933, basically to the second crisis in 1936, I guess, 37. And that did the New Deal help this or harm this? I mean, all these stories that we have been told usually are much more complicated.
Correct.
What was the thing in this book and this fiscal crisis that actually shocked you and you thought?
What shocked me was everybody knew by the fall of 1974 that New York City was going to get and needed a federal bailout. And everyone agreed everyone knew it was going to happen. And everyone had a sense of what the contours of it would be. Now, the ultimate contours matter a lot. And who gets blamed and who takes credit matter a lot. But everybody knew that the state of New York at the time had its own issues. It was not going to be able to provide the liquidity needed The bond market was oversaturated with New York City securities in part because of the chicanery, and that this was a problem too big to solve on the local level, the state level, or through the private sector. So it was going to be Washington. And Washington knew that, in part because who was the vice president of the United States at that time?
What year?
1975.
Oh, who is
a fellow by the name of Nelson Rockefeller? Who was the governor of New York and caused many of the problems. The secretary of the Treasury for Ford was a man by the name of William Simon, who was the municipal bond head at Salomon Brothers and involved in he was on the controller's committee of banks that underwrote the debt and advised the controller. So everybody knew where this was heading. The question is, who's going to take the blame and who's going to take the credit? And that really was the game of 1975 in terms of...
Who do you assign the blame to?
I assign the blame to the politically privileged of New York City and New York State. And that's the unions, that's the politicians, that's the banks, that's the lawyers.
The entire machine was broken, corrupt.
Because everybody knew that the city was borrowing against phony revenues. Here's the thing that they would do. For example, it's illegal to borrow long-term to finance short-term expenses, right? One of the municipal finance is very simple. I only borrow intra-year to finance expenses because expenses are even and revenues are lumpy, so I can borrow in advance. But long-term borrowing should only be for capital assets, a bridge, a school. But it's really nice to be able to borrow long-term to finance ordinary course expenses. So they had a fellow by the name of Jim Kavanaugh who worked in the budget. He never went to college. But was an absolute genius at coming up with these schemes. So he did things like, well, teachers have 30-year careers, right? And isn't teacher training an ongoing thing that we do? So we're going to deem 20% of teacher salaries to be lifetime training, a capital asset. We can go to the long-term bond market and borrow against it.
You got to love the Irish.
Right.
The uneducated.
They're all over this thing. Not to slander my own people.
Let's borrow against these fucking teachers. It's like, all right.
Other things. We're running out of dough. Okay, we need to go to the bond market and borrow against future tax revenue, called TANs, tax anticipation notes. So Kavanaugh would say, okay, we really don't have anything legit. Let's send out tax bills to embassies and religious properties. All these things are tax exempt. It's never going to get paid. But you could walk down to Wall Street, say, we've got these new tax receivables. Let's do a bond deal. They did things like that.
No one's looking at the fact that they're writing invoices for people who don't pay taxes.
That would require in-depth due diligence. If you required that, you'd be thrown out of the bond deal in good times.
So it's important to point this out.
The SEC wrote a long report, 1,000-page, actually affected the 77 mayoral campaign, but got Koch elected probably, that details all of this chicanery. I'm not some sort of intrepid genius. I just read the SEC report.
But no, it's funny, though. We don't realize now, because there's so much more transparency, it's so easy to muckrake and post something on the internet and get people talking about it. The level of corruption in governments like New York City was astronomical. I mean, whether it's through mafia influence on unions or on politics.
Well, a lot of the book is about Tony Scotto, who was the Gambino affiliated union boss of the docks right down here. And he was one of the most important people in the Democratic Party. He was on a first-name basis with Carter and Teddy Kennedy and Hugh Carey and all these people.
And they all knew what he did. They all knew where he was.
Of course they knew. Hugh Carey testified, as did Mayor Lindsay, right? So it's not just a Democrat thing, as a character witness in Scotto's trial, where he was convicted and sentenced to 5 years in federal prison for RICO violations in terms of how he ran the union.
So the Italian mafia is effectively, involved in running the city in the 70s.
Correct.
And
so was Roy Cohn, by the way. Roy Cohn was on the finance committee of the Democratic Party.
Which you point out in the book, by the way, that he was a member in good standing.
Absolutely.
We don't remember this now. He was Donald Trump's friend. He was McCarthy's lawyer, etc.
Right. Oh, now he's been vilified. He was about as establishment as you can get in the 70s. He was almost the nominee of the Conservative Party for the United States Senate in 1974. And he threw these legendary parties where judges, politicians, Chuck Schumer plotted and schemed to get a ticket to Roy Cohn's birthday party at Studio 54. When he was a first-term assemblyman.
Wouldn't this now, and we got to get to this too, because wouldn't this now be some sort of Epstein thing? You have this guy.
Epstein, here we go.
But you have this. I can't imagine people would take these conspiracies that people. I imagine a Roy Cohn party is a lot of cocaine. There's a lot of people having illicit sex in public, and there's Pierre Trudeau's wife is there, and all these politicians and stuff. Blackmail. This is what gets people's mind. I mean, this was an ordinary course of business in the 70s.
See, there is a connection between Roy Cohn and Jeffrey Epstein in terms of how they operated. They both knew one thing, that relationships and the reputation of influence and the reputation of power is almost as good as the real thing.
Yeah.
And if you can convince people that British royalty might be at my party, and that high rank, Bill Clinton might be there, and Bill Gates, all these important people, all of a sudden you get this aura of power and influence.
Yeah.
And given the rank, ambition, and vulgarity of the New York power elites, they will undoubtedly, many of them, particularly those who aren't really all that savvy, but very ambitious, will be attracted to that. And if you get a critical mass of so-called elites and establishment in your orbit, you can parlay that into real power and influence, which is what Roy Cohn was at the bottom of the barrel after he was thrown out of Washington after the
Army McCarthy hearings,
right?
Yeah.
And Morgenthau had a jihad against him when he was U.S. attorney, indicted him 3 times, lost all 3 trials, which basically made Roy Cohn into some sort of demigod who could fight the federal government.
I recommend people go and watch. They profiled him on 60 Minutes. In the 70s.
They did a couple times,
and it's not. It's not like, look at this scumbag Roy Cohn who used to work for McCarthy. I mean, they had tough on him, but his palatial apartment.
Ken Letter wrote a piece for Esquire magazine with Roy on the cover with a halo called The Legal Executioner. Now, again, Aletta told a lot of the truth about Roy, but it was also a look how powerful and influential Roy is.
But I think that in the 70s, too, this, again, is kind of related to Epstein because he's kind
and Epstein used that smoke and mirrors, too.
I mean, it's the last gasp of this stuff when in New York City, and maybe I'm wrong about this. I mean, you're a lawyer. Maybe I'm wrong that this actually exists today. But you had people who were famous lawyers who were in the newspapers in Page 6. I mean, Ed Hayes.
Famous investment bankers.
Yeah, I mean, a famous investment.
Who's the Felix Roden of today?
Yeah, they don't really exist. I mean, that universe of kingmakers and these mockers like Epstein, people don't really understand with the Epstein thing of the milieu that he's in, that he's just a guy who's blackmailing all these people. And which is, we'll talk about that. But the fact that our brokers of New York, it's a different world now.
It's a different world.
I mean, you know this world well, right?
A little bit.
That was the biggest bullshit answer I've ever heard in my life. Do we have to cut that? No, we're going to actually zoom in on him when he looks uncomfortable and he's doing that. But this kind of world back in the day, talk to me a little bit about it. I mean, there's a lot to be said about the kingmakers. If there's a heat map over New York of pompous assholes, you would have a big, big black mark.
I profile, I tell the story of the book, including a number of lawyers who were incredibly powerful back then. One was a fellow named Bunny Lindenbaum, who was Fred Trump's lawyer.
Bunny Lindenbaum.
Right, and he started in Brooklyn, and he represented local developers, and Fred Trump was, when he started, not a huge, big-time guy. And his business grew over time. He then went to Manhattan and became the largest real estate lawyer in Manhattan. He became particularly powerful because he was very close to Bob Wagner. And Bob Wagner had him replace Robert Moses on the Planning Commission. And then what Bunny did is what he always did. He raised money for Bob Wagner while getting his favors for his developers. The New York Times blew the whistle, and all of a sudden they had to threw him off.
Unbelievably corrupt.
And the joke was, a Bunny got thrown off the commission for the very reasons he got put on it. But that's just how things worked back then. You had Bill Shea of Shea Stadium fame. Also, Lindenbaum, Shea, Cohn, and Simon Rifkind from the Paul Weiss firm were the most powerful politically connected lawyers in New York City at the time. Shea was famous because when the two National League teams left in 57, Bob Wagner was catching all kinds of hell. And Shea, who was connected with the Brooklyn Democratic machine, obviously the Brooklyn Dodgers had 11.
Yeah, the Giants leave too.
He was put forward by the bosses to say, we should appoint a commission, put Shea in charge of it. We'll see if we can get a National League team here. And Shea obviously accomplished that, and you got the New York Mets. They named the stadium. Wagner named the stadium after him. He was so happy with the result. And Shea would do things like, he was very close with Nelson Rockefeller. In fact, there's a rumor when Rockefeller died, the instructions were left to call Shea, who had a townhouse 2 doors away, and that Shea's the one who fixed up the police report. Ultimately, the New York Times did an investigation. They realized he was not editing his book, but he was there with Megan Marshak and perhaps another woman, and no one really knows ultimately what was going down.
Again, Epstein's piker stuff compared to
but
New York in the
but
70s.
Shea was brilliant that he was bipartisan, even though he came out of the Brooklyn Democratic machine, as was Roy Cohn, bipartisan. But he was very close with Lindsay. He was very close with Rockefeller. And when the Pennsylvania Railroad went broke in the late 60s, the Long Island Railroad was owned by it, and they were very concerned about what's going to happen to the Long Island Railroad. Citibank was particularly concerned because they had a $50 million loan out to the Long Island Railroad, which was a lot of money in those days. So a commission was appointed. Bill Shea was appointed as the lawyer for it. And the state bought the Long Island Railroad out of the bankruptcy for $60 million. Now, the state controlled, there's an investigation. How could this be worth $60 million? Well, they had to repay the state loan. But it was worth a negative $60 million because of the upgrades that were necessary to keep the trains from running off the tracks. And no one could pretend that Bill Shea just got taken to the cleaners in that negotiation. The legislature wanted Citibank to be repaid, and this was a quid pro quo for God knows what.
Is it fair to say that New York was more corrupt of a city than most American municipalities at that point? Because I mean, the way that you're explaining this.
Let's talk about Chicago.
Yeah, well, Chicago.
Let's talk about Boston.
How did America become less corrupt? I mean, it was a very corrupt country when you looked and focused in on cities like Boston, going back to Honey Fitz, and Chicago had a big mafia.
You have to say that with reverent tone.
Yeah, reverent tone. Yeah. I say that as a Bostonian and as an Irishman. There's a lot of scumbags in there, and I love them all. But Chicago, the Daley family, it just doesn't really exist that much.
Well, I have a theory that it's just more sophisticated now.
You think so?
Oh, sure. Rather than putting my idiot nephew on the city payroll, I form a not-for-profit that contracts to provide the services to the city. And I just put my idiot nephew in that not-for-profit. And he's not on the city payroll. It's a legitimate contract negotiated. But is it really less corrupt? How is it that in those days, if a congressman did well by the machine, he was rewarded when he left with a partnership at Shea and Gould or Paul Weiss or one of these other places, making an okay living. But now you don't have to work because you have $10 million in your personal account from your trading. Is it less corrupt, or is it a different form of corruption? I'm not sure.
You have Donald Trump, a picture of Donald Trump on the cover of this book.
You have to, because you can't sell books.
Yeah, you can't sell. Have Donald Trump on the cover. There should be a picture of Putin on there too.
Right.
But Fred Trump is in this book.
If I could have found a connection with Kendall Jenner, she'd be on the front cover.
Well, just give me an afternoon. I'll figure it out. Trump is kind of made in this universe,
he is,
right?
Correct.
And there's two things about it. One is that he knows how to play the game. He knows how all this stuff works. This is why, Roger Stone told me the first time I interviewed him that he met Trump because they were trying to run around some, I can't remember.
I've got a very funny Roger
Harbor
Stone
thing.
story.
But he fixed something for him. And it seemed corrupt when he said it to me. And I was like, oh, so he's kind of in this universe, marinating in this. And I think it's also the thing that he makes him understand that running for president and saying, I'm going to drain the swamp, without really knowing the details of the swamp, because he's not a creature of D.C., was probably informed by his time in New York and the presumption that everything operated on the same way. Because, to get things done, people said, oh, he might have had connections to the mafia. It's like, I would be surprised if he didn't, right?
Yeah.
And is that...
It's not wrong. I don't think the president's wrong in that regard either. I have a very funny story. My wife, as you know, is a big Republican. I'm a registered Democrat still. we were down at the candlelight ball the night before the inauguration, the big fancy swanky thing.
Yeah.
And who walks in but Roger Stone? Okay. I had just finished the book. And I said, Roger Stone, it was really nice to me. He's written a book about survival crisis. Yeah. And I said, Roy Cohn's character in the book, and I'm just curious, what do you think Roy Cohn would think of a night like this? Donald Trump being inaugurated again, the greatest political comeback maybe since Nixon, maybe ever. What would you think if he was here? He looked at me and said, he is here. He's looking down on us now with Jesus, and he's very happy.
As somebody who's interviewed Roger Stone a couple of times, it seems about right. I mean, the guy's psychotic. In so many
he
ways.
was entertaining. I don't know if he's psychotic. I think
he's crazy like a fox. People should watch the documentary on Netflix called "Get Me Roger Stone."
Yes,
and it was prior to the whole Trump thing, so they treat him like as a kind of funny, interesting political character. And now, after the Proud Boys stuff,
remember, Roger was going to be Bob Dole's senior campaign advisor in '96.
Yeah.
Except the swinger ad stuff all came out.
Yeah.
And the Christian right obviously did away with that. But Roger was a mainstream James Baker level political consultant, operative, Lee Atwater. He was right up there in that pantheon before he had his fall from grace.
Yeah, I mean, it was obviously a very practiced line, but the first time I met him, he was talking about that scandal. And he said, Michael, I'm the only person who's ever been kicked out of D.C. for fucking my own wife, which I thought was a pretty good line. But the swinger stuff.
There's your first guest here, Anthony Weiner, who was thrown out for no, right.
Well, that's a separate episode to deal with that. Yeah. We talked about Epstein, so we were talking about scumbags and powerful people in New York City. And you're a good person to talk to that stuff. You've met him. You met Jeffrey Epstein. When did you meet Jeffrey Epstein?
I met
Jeffrey. And where is the video that they have of you?
10 years ago. Yeah. I'm hoping there's no video. I met him 10 years ago at a very swanky birthday party in Southampton. I talked to him for about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And I thought he was sort of a dweeby, not very impressive guy. I was sort of surprised that all these people found his company all that interesting. I could see why he had to pay for female companionship.
Yeah.
He was not a charming or charismatic guy in the least. He seemed like sort of a nothing kind of guy.
But this was after his first...
After he got pinched the first time, correct.
It was 2004.
This would have been 14, 15, somewhere in that neighborhood.
Yeah.
And I was just curious. Now, my wife, strangely enough, interviewed for a job with Jeffrey Epstein back in the mid '90s, maybe late '90s, when she was thinking of leaving Goldman.
So Bear Stearns?
No, she was at Goldman at the time.
Yeah.
And no, he was purportedly starting a hedge fund. And my wife, as they all are, wanted to go on the buy side. So she took an interview through a mutual friend. And she showed up at his office and she asked him, who are your LPs, where you're raising? Well, we're going to figure that out. What's your trading strategy? Well, we're going to figure that out. Who's your portfolio manager? Is it going to be you or somebody else? Well, I'm going to figure it out. She looked around. There was him and a secretary. She said, this is nuts. This guy's a phony. And walked away.
And didn't have the sense that he was the financial genius that so many people...
No, see, that's the great mystery. Everyone wants to talk about the client list and the non-existent videos.
Yeah.
How did he make a income, which I, in my estimate, say would have to be 10 to 20 million a year, okay? And that may be conservative. To support this lifestyle.
Yeah.
No one's gotten to the bottom of the dough. That to me is the interesting riddle here, not this nonsense of, he's got tapes of... of
powerful people and he's a Mossad agent and all that stuff.
Right.
Where do you think...
Why wouldn't he have used those tapes to get out of trouble the second time?
Yeah. I mean, or the first time.
Or the first time.
He actually thought that sentence was particularly harsh. We got like 19 months or something.
Right. So if he has a Trump tape, you're trying to tell me he wouldn't threaten that card and have this all dropped?
Of course. I mean, Ghislaine Maxwell could do the same thing, and she's in prison right now.
Yeah.
Where do you think he made his money? I mean, people in his universe. You... are somebody who's in that kind of universe in Manhattan.
It's a mystery. Okay?
You know people who know him.
He clearly made some money with the Les Wexner relationship.
Yes. And Les Wexner, for those who don't know, is the guy who started the Limited Corporation, then Victoria's Secret, places like that. Yeah.
Now, he may just be a shrewd investor who parlayed that into more dough. He was not a trader of significant size because he had no arrangement with a Wall Street bank, with a broker-dealer. He had no prime brokerage agreement that anyone could put their hands on.
And that's a common thing and necessary thing.
Necessary thing if you're doing large-scale hedge fund level type trade. Yeah. He had no license to raise money from third parties and be a fund manager. So there's no footprint of somebody who had a large-scale operation in financial services. Could it be one-off deals? Could it be doing favors for people that were maybe on the margins in terms of the activities?
Or not so in the margins. Leon Black, the former head of Apollo Capital, that's the one transaction we all know about. He pays him almost $170 million and claims that this saved him $2 billion in his tax burden. I mean, if you look at that proportionally, he gets 15% or something like that.
Yeah, could be things like that.
Is that possible?
It's possible, absolutely.
Because I think most of the time in stories like this, the quotidian stuff is usually the best explanation because it is quite boring. But people have been looking into this story for a very long time.
But even that doesn't explain, you're going to pay taxes on that. So that may fund your operations for 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
But, he's been at this a very long time, living, in an enormous lifestyle for, 25 years.
When you see him at this party, this is after he's served jail time. And again, it's in a very light way where he has his day release and the rest of it.
Right.
I imagine this party in Southampton, there's a lot of people there that know Jeffrey Epstein, are friends with him, and ultimately invite him to these parties. One of the questions that I think everybody asks, the kind of normie question, is why do people keep associating with him after he was convicted of, having sex with underage girls?
Well, I think the morality of the elites of New York City have not improved much since 1975.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think people are ambitious and striving.
Yeah.
And having a celebrity, even one who's sort of diabolical, has a certain attraction, I think, to certain people.
Yeah.
And it shows a certain level of connection and being in the circle, so to speak. I'm speculating.
Yeah, see, I think that's largely right, but then you have to wonder why Bill Clinton and Stephen Hawking and just a number of people, it's bizarre, who have all the power and influence in the world, still want to.
Well, Bill Clinton spent a lot of time raising money for
the Clinton
CGI,
Foundation.
For the Clinton Foundation. This all could have been part of that effort. One can speculate.
No, I think that's the same is true with all these scientists.
And I think the same
scientists and people.
Right, and I think the same with Gates, who's raising money for the Gates Foundation.
Yeah.
And I think, like we said earlier, the reputation of money and power and influence can be as good as the real thing.
Yeah.
And they may have, been told by the Harvard types, well, you really should see Jeffrey. Boy, he's really connected, and he can raise some money, put you in contact with people who can write checks for you for a foundation. And Epstein played that card. He played the, I'm involved in the philanthropic world in a big way. Sort of thing.
Yeah, and it sort of compounds.
Which is not the classic reputational cleanser, right? I mean, just join the board of some foundation or write checks and be a philanthropist.
Did you ever come across Ghislaine Maxwell?
I did. My wife knew her, not very well, but from the New York. So my wife's a lot more sophisticated and I was busy trying to make partner at the law firm. Yeah. She was a pretty girl, worked at Global. They all wanted her at parties.
They don't invite oafish Irishmen.
No, they don't.
Yeah, they don't. That's a tougher invite.
Right. I mean, I only eat the pigs in a blanket. I mean, I'm not good party company. But Ghislaine was a fixture, so to speak, on the New York social scene. Okay. She did have, even though she was one generation removed from absolute vulgarity, but she still grew up in that fancy British upper class milieu, which I'm sure Jeffrey found very attractive. Yeah, and she did.
Her father's was Robert Maxwell. Yeah.
Correct. She did know the elites of the sort of Eurotrash and American upper class.
Yeah.
So she was a known, much more so than Jeffrey. She was a known figure in New York in those days. Mm-hmm. Jeffrey was more of a reclusive sort of figure, and not as out there as Galen was.
But it's not surprising that they would meet. I mean, this is a story of the upper class. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is why people are fascinated by it.
Well, the upper class is populated, particularly the British upper class, with some of the most venal people you ever want to meet.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it shouldn't be a total surprise that this low level of morality is up in this elevated sort of setting.
Yeah, I mean, what you look at the behavior, and I can find a version of it amongst middle class people in Nebraska. And the only reason that this is different is that people weave conspiracy theories because of the names of the people in the upper class. There must be some dark controlling feature here in which all of this is happening, and we are ultimately getting screwed too, whether it's Tucker Carlson saying that it's Israel or whether it's people saying
that's a particularly pernicious angle that this all has taken.
Yes.
It would be much better if Jeffrey Epstein was an Anglo-German.
Yeah, that's right.
Because this is very dangerous. I think it's a marker of a sickness in society when anti-Semitism can be openly winked and nodded at and not be called out. And I think, I wouldn't call you a man of the right, but I think you are a libertarian with those kind of instincts. It's imperative to call out, I think, when the Tucker Carlsons and others. And I love Joe Rogan, but I think when he has these loons on.
Daryl Cooper.
Right. I think you've got to call these people out.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's a laundering of reputation.
There is with Epstein this pernicious anti-Semitism that is now becoming linked, and it's nefarious.
You saw a little bit of it with the Harvey Weinstein stuff.
You did, correct.
And then it sort of metastasized, and it was like, as a friend of mine said, Harvey Weinstein, Jeffrey Epstein, it's a pretty bad time for the Jews for these scandals, because what happens is obviously you're always looking for the bigger, Mossad. So you have this thing with Jeffrey Epstein. It was said that he was an intelligence agent. We have, this is like third hand. Why go to Israel? Why not say
no idea
the British, the American?
I have no idea why MI6, Mossad, or CIA would find Jeffrey Epstein the least bit interesting.
Yeah. Well, the counter argument from these people is that he knows the rich and the famous, and he can keep an eye on them. He could plant stories. He can do this, that, and
No, he was a sycophant. He was trying to insinuate himself among the rich and famous and powerful to be able to show himself to be someone who, he had wealth, there's no question about that. I don't think he had very much power or influence at all, to be totally honest with you. As opposed to Roy Cohn, who did have power and influence.
You don't think he had power? So you think he basically just had money?
Correct.
And hung out with
I think it was a degenerate playboy
Yeah.
who liked to have the patina of seriousness through his relationship with Harvard and some and the Clintons and what have you.
Yeah.
But no, I don't think he was viewed as a serious political player, policy player, serious anything.
Yeah, I think that one of the interesting things about this story, from like a perspective of somebody who's a media watcher, which I've been doing for a long time, is how these things can spin out of control so quickly. That there are people that are like barnacles on this story, that are journalists, that are so-called journalists, that are political people within the MAGA universe, and on the other side of this, Andrew Schultz, my pal, just had Ro Khanna on, who's like sees an opportunity here for a bit of a. But there's so many people in this story who are clearly lying, but people have a binary view of this stuff. That, well, if you say that someone's lying, you're saying that Jeffrey Epstein is innocent. None of this stuff is true. The story of Jeffrey Epstein, the sort of baseline.
You cannot hold it in two things in your head.
Well,
one is he's an absolute criminal and
degenerate ratbag that was clearly
is not a Mossad agent.
Is not a Mossad agent.
Doesn't have the videos of,
correct. Or that he was making, the implication is that he was making his money from all of these rich people by procuring women for them, because none of them could get women, I guess. they need Jeffrey Epstein to do
Right, that's so preposterous.
Yeah, and then when he's doing this, the first person that he films and says, by the way, I have you on tape, doesn't tell anyone else. This just keeps happening to every powerful person.
And they continue to associate with him.
Correct. They continue to associate with him.
Right.
But that thing, like even the first part of the story, one of the witnesses, Virginia Roberts, he changed his name, who just died, just killed herself recently, was clearly an unreliable witness.
Well, I think it's a sad story.
It's a very sad story.
Suicide.
She committed suicide. She had a very troubled childhood, which is usually what these people...
Which is what predators like Epstein look for.
Exactly.
People who are not necessarily...
Howard Stern, in his old days, used to have porn stars on all the time. And he would always ask the porn stars, like the first question, like, when were you molested? It was like just assumed, like in a very kind of, he used to be this way.
Yeah.
Because you get into that universe, you have some damage, right? And so these are some damaged people. And then all of a sudden they're propelled to these, Nightline and everything. In the stories, like her stories about Dershowitz, et cetera, she pulled back on them. She said, well, maybe that wasn't true. Maybe I misremembered this. Maybe I wasn't with, Prince Andrew or something. I don't think she ever backed up on that one. But there's a lot of this stuff that might not be true, but we presume it's all true, and then we go out from there.
And the number of people who have sort of gotten in on the grift.
Yeah.
From all various different angles.
I mean, Tucker Carlson's one of them. Yeah. All these people in conservative world. And this is the thing about, these guys.
Oh, not just conservative world. They're because of the, ridiculous claim of a Trump angle in all this.
Oh, yeah.
The left is piling on now, and you've got lawyers representing victims who are cleaning up their own reputations, and you've got journalists who are, fueling the fire, including some friends of ours.
Yeah.
It's not very pleasant.
Yeah.
That's the real story. It's like a bonfire of vulgarities.
Yeah. It's too bad somebody hasn't written a novel about this.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
A very good 80s novel that includes characters that are based on friends of yours, right?
It really would be the vehicle of writing a 2020s episode or version of that.
Yeah, I mean, this is what Vanity Fair was great for. As journalists understand this back in the Graydon Carter days and the Tina Brown days too, if people who big vulgar rich people who exert a sort of terrifying influence, taking them down a peg. And there's not a lot of that these days.
Well, that's how the whole Epstein thing hit the
correct
the zeitgeist with the Vanity Fair article.
Yes, in 2004 or something like that. Yeah. Rich Farley, thank you for joining. I mean, I could talk to you about all this. I mean, did we talk about the book?
A little bit.
A little bit.
Hold it up. So
I'll hold it up. I mean, you gotta
and buy it. It's
you
available
gotta buy
at Amazon and bookstores.
Yeah, they know.
Near you
they
right
know
now.
how to buy books.
Okay.
I don't know. People say this. I got to go to Amazon.
No, what they don't know.
What is Amazon?
Hold on. What they don't know. Is that Michael Moynihan edited my first book.
That might be true. And have I found?
No. I'm going to tell them a story.
Have I found errors in this?
I'm going to tell them a story. When he didn't think the book was going to do so well, he didn't really mention anything. Oh, yeah, I'm doing. And then when it turned out to be okay and actually got some good reviews, et cetera, he started telling everybody, I had to rewrite the whole damn book. Farley handed this manuscript. It was absolutely terrible. I had to rewrite the
Literally none of it is yours. It's literally all mine, which is why it's so different from this book. So buy this book, but don't expect it to be as good as Wall Street Wars, which has a style to it.
All its own.
Oh, my God. Because who wrote it?
So I guess it is plagiarized, which is another one of your specialties.
The better Irishman wrote it. Okay, you know where to go to Amazon, buy the friggin' book. All right, well, now it's time for your favorite segment. You've told me that. It's your favorite segment. AMA, is it Ask Moynihan? I still can't figure this out. Is it Ask Michael anything? Ask Moynihan anything? Either way, this is the Ask Moynihan Anything segment, and we'll be doing these in the future too, so pay attention, and you too can get all of your problems solved by me, weirdly. You have the opportunity on 2A to come on here and talk to us and ask questions, but we decide the topics. If we're going to talk about, Epstein, it's been a lot of Epstein talk. You got to have to ask about Epstein. But this Ask Me Anything, we mean it. The anything is anything. So we're going to go to some people here. and see what they have to say for themselves. I'll have to see what I have to say for myself. And David is up first.
Hi, Michael. Big fan of the show.
You better be.
I am indeed. I'm an aspiring journalist, and one day I'd like to be a Michael Moynihan myself. So I'm starting journalism school in a couple of weeks' time, and I was wondering what you would do to get the most out of J School.
Yeah.
And if you were starting your career again today, how would you position yourself in this new, very fragmented world of media?
So I said that you could ask me anything. I didn't promise that you're going to like the answers, because this is one of those ones I suspect you won't like the answer. First thing, congratulations on getting into journalism school. Second of all, what the hell are you doing? Why? Why are you going? You shouldn't go to journalism school. Look, I can't be mean about it because I know you're going and you've probably already written that first check. But I didn't go to journalism school. Maybe that shows. I have spoken to journalism classes in college, and I've always met really interesting and clever people. But I noticed always, particularly at certain journalism schools, that it's kind of like, stamping license plates. Everything that comes out kind of is the same. Numbers are slightly different. The shape is the same. The contours are the same. And I think that's kind of how they like it. I'm not sure. But I don't know what it's like to be someone with slightly heterodox views in a journalism school these days. I mean, if you say you want to have any career that is in any way similar to mine, I mean, please don't. It's a complete nightmare. But I'm assuming that maybe your politics aren't, the Nation magazine variety. So I don't know what that is like these days, but journalism is about a couple of things. There's not a lot of things you can learn in journalism school, I don't think. People can teach you how to write a lead, if you're writing, for instance. We always do this thing, the lead, the top paragraph, and then, you have your body of the thing, and then you have the kicker that comes back to the lead. There's all sort of structural things that you can learn in journalism school. But how does one be a journalist? Well, let's ask ourselves the question of how many people out there refer to themselves as journalists, sometimes with a word in front of it, the word citizen, for citizen journalists. But how many people out there, journalists, have broken stories, have written interesting things, have Substacks, who didn't go to journalism school? So how are they figuring out how to do this? It's not that difficult, to be honest. The hardest thing about journalism is access, right? I mean, I'm sorry to say, but that's true. I know people who are probably pretty good interviewers. They couldn't get to Donald Trump. They couldn't press him on issues. I know a lot of people who would do great profiles of X, Y, or Z person, but they can't get to them. That is the hardest thing about journalism. Once you get in the door, so if you're profiling somebody, or if you're doing a story, let's say you're doing a story about corruption in X, Y, and Z place, you have to have people on the record that will talk to you, or even on background. Getting people to talk, getting people to sit down and be interviewed is, I'm sorry to say, nearly impossible. What is the hardest thing about doing this show? You would look at this and say, it can't be that hard. And you would be right. The hardest thing about this show is getting people to sit in that other chair. That is the endless struggle in doing a show like this, is getting interesting people, smart people, people that are good on camera, people that know how to tell a story, that know how to answer a question. And that is a very, very limited group of people. So once you get that group of people, then getting them here on a particular day and time, getting them to agree, because the people who you really want don't need you. The only thing of sitting down in an interview is probably a downside. They don't need to be more famous. They don't need more attention. And those are the people you always want. Donald Trump, somebody in the Senate, for instance. The only thing for them is downside. Unless there's a scandal, right? Unless they're, Anthony Weiner or something, and you're trying to rehab your credibility and say, hey, look, I'm a normal person. I'm a nice person. But otherwise, powerful people don't need you. So it's nearly impossible to get them to sit down. So access is the number one issue. Once you've got that, you're about halfway there. And the second thing is, how do you get a job in journalism? If you want to go the traditional route, you have to know somebody. It's true. I'm sorry to say. People will lie to you and say it's not true. There's a meritocracy. Send your clips to people from your college stuff. Send resumes. You're not going to hear back. But if you know somebody that can help you get in the door, That's the way it is. I hate the fact it's that way. And the kind of affirmative action in journalism where people try to find quote unquote representation, it never represents the people that you want to represent, who are sort of working class people, people that didn't go to college, didn't have the, particularly, journalism school is a graduate school. It's, more debt, more difficulty, more time you're not earning money. And to do that costs a lot. It's, you have to know people in that sense too. But I have to say that I would love more journalists that come from non-elite backgrounds, right? And that's a hard thing too. So my advice to you is something that you can't take because you've already accepted. But once you're in journalism school, just push these people who are teaching you. Because I think that a lot of the message is about speaking truth to power and challenging power. That's a part of it, but it's only a part of it. But that crusading thing, forget about that. Just write good stories, report good stories, talk to interesting people. Because, there's journalists who are good journalists and bad journalists. But you've never seen, by the way, there's a challenge that I've asked of people in the past. I think I've gotten one satisfactory answer. Of all the journalists in movies, they're always the good guys. They're always the guys that break it wide open. And they're not all good guys. There's a lot of bad journalists. There's a lot of opportunity out there to be a good journalist. But that doesn't always mean taking a swing at power. There's a million other things that need to be reported on too. So go out there. I don't recommend it as a profession, but once you're in it, there's certain things I recommend, which is just try your hardest to get access to people. And that is difficult. But most of the job of journalism is glad handing, is, warming up to people, this is what's so strange to me. So many journalists who have no skill, interpersonal skills. There's like a bit of autism in a lot of them. Sorry, can I say that? I can say that. And I'm like, how do you do this? How do you manage it? Well, they do rewrites. They sit in a building somewhere and they rewrite stuff that's already been reported by somebody else. And the final comment I'll make on this is talk to Ben Smith, who's the editor-in-chief and the founder of Semaphore. In that kind of thing about getting out of the building, we were talking about people on Substack. And people like Ben Smith and the journalists in his world report on stuff, talk to people, they get out of their chairs and they go in and they do things. Because without that, these other journalists would have no job. Because they're commenting on things that actual journalists created. So, sitting around and pontificating, wait a second, isn't that exactly what I'm doing right now? Yes, it is. But I did journalism before this, so I've paid my dues. But get out there and get out of your chair. That's the thing for journalism. Sitting and writing that the new Jurassic Park movie is transphobic or something is clickbait. It is a net negative in the world. And, for journalism, quote unquote, it's useless. So get out of the building, talk to people. That's it. It's that simple. Sorry, David. And save your money. Can I have some of the money that you're paying them? Can just give me like 5% of it? Because what is it? What is it a year, David? Do you know?
It's a fair amount.
It doesn't want a fair amount? How much is a fair amount, David?
A good salary at a decent job.
Okay, so as a journalist, if you were a journalist at this point and you were me, what would you do? You would realize that the person that you're interviewing refuses to answer a question, and then you would really dig in and you'd be like, okay, I got him against the ropes now. All right, let's say 70 grand or something like that. Just give me 5 grand of it and we'll call it even, right? Anyway, thank you, David, and good luck in journalism school, even though I don't think you need it. All right, thank you for joining us. And make sure you go and like and subscribe so you don't miss a single episode of the Moynihan Report over at YouTube. I don't tell you how to do that. And we will see you again next time we're here. Thanks for joining us.